Your testimony. We'll now turn to member questions. The chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes. Fraud and scams are not new concepts. I'm extremely concerned by how rampant, and as we all are, it has become in recent years. Ms. Griffin, I'd like to start with you. Can you briefly explain the difference between fraud and a scam, and then elaborate when you mentioned that fraud is a national security crisis? Who is behind the scams? Who is behind the fraud? Many think it's lone actors. Others, as you're expressing, it's criminal networks. If you could expand, please.
Yes, absolutely. Within the financial services ecosystem, a fraud occurs when the customer has no knowledge or participation in the transaction. So if you buy a coffee on the street here in DC and simultaneously your card is used to buy a computer in Texas, your financial institution says, hey, something's going on here that's not right. But you had no knowledge of that transaction. In a scam, you have perhaps met someone online. You received a phone call from someone you believe is the FBI asking you to move funds. You authorize that transaction to your financial institution and are part of the process. In that case, the financial institution has very different sets of information about what's happening in that transaction because you have authorized it. You ask about who's behind this. The annual threat assessment of the U.S. intelligence community has identified these scams, authorized transactions, as part of a nexus of criminal activity threatening the United States, perpetuated by transnational criminal organizations and state-affiliated groups that also engage in human trafficking, drug trafficking, weapons, and human smuggling. North Korean hackers, Mexican cartels, Russian crime syndicates, and triad gangs affiliated with the CCP are among the U.S. adversaries that are benefiting from these crimes. We also know that they are using human traffic victims in some places to commit those crimes. Scam compounds in Southeast Asia may have as many as 400,000 enslaved people forced to commit those scams against U.S. and other countries' citizens.
Well, thank you. It's quite compelling. Mr. Bednowitz, what are some of the explanations for the rise in financial fraud and scams? You mentioned 33% increase, I think you said, over a 2-year period. And I really appreciate you saying these are not just statistics. These are people that are truly being seriously victimized. If you would, please.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chairman. There are 3 primary drivers of the increase in scams and fraud over time.
Just lean into the mic a little bit.
Oh, sorry. There are 3 primary drivers of the increase in scams and fraud over time: the increase in data breaches, the industrialization of fraud, and the rise of AI. Data breaches have tripled since 2020, and that means there is a plethora, this according to the ITRC and our own data, but that means there's now billions and billions of pieces of personal information that are exposed on the dark web that criminals can use to target people, to target them with compelling messages from their banks, target them with spoofed numbers. That information is very critical. Then you take that, no longer, as Ms. Griffin said, it's no longer an individual in a basement somewhere. You have criminal organizations across the world that are professional, that have large staffs, at times human traffic themselves, that are doing this and targeting victims day in and day out. And those 2 on their own are enough to drive the growth. But then you take AI into it. And I said AI was a double-edged sword in the hands of these organizations. Right. What would have taken more time and cost to take that information that's out there in the dark web and combine it with information, social media, and public internet would be harder. That's become easier and easier, so that no longer do we have the days of the Nigerian print scam with all of the spelling errors, but instead you've got emails that look like they're from your bank, that have your account number in there, that have your name.
Thank you. Great answers. Mr. Bender, relatively quickly, the Office of Scam and Fraud Prevention you brought up, there's a lot of discrepancies, whether it's $12 billion, $16 billion of loss to, from these scammers and fraud experts. talk about that, how important that would be to interconnect government agencies with.
Sure. I think that
economy.
the challenge we've got, we've heard the numbers that Americans are experiencing scam could be $100 billion. And yet you have to ask yourself the question, who's in charge of scam and fraud prevention in the U.S. government? Is it the Treasury Department? Is it Department of Justice? Is it Department of Commerce? We have no central point to report these. And in fact, consumers are confused of where they should even report a scam or fraud. Should they report to the FBI? Should they report to the CFPB? Should they report to FTC and others? So having a central place where we could report this information that could be acted upon to actually take action for the consumer.
My apologies,
and
we're going to
gather
have to finish
trends
this later. My
would be helpful.
time is